There were 6 of us at the cabin that weekend. Me, my younger brother Nate, my cousin Derek, Derek's girlfriend Amanda, and 2 of Derek's friends from work named Shane and Tyler. The trip was supposed to be simple, just 3 days in northern Michigan before winter got really bad. The cabin itself belonged to Tyler's uncle. It's an old place in the middle of nowhere. No nearby neighbors and no cell service. Exactly the kind of place Derek loved. The drive there took almost 5 hours, and by the time we arrived, it was already getting dark. I remember the first thing I noticed was how isolated the cabin really was. No other lights anywhere, just trees and endless woods in every direction. The cabin sat beside a frozen lake with one long dirt road leading in and out, and honestly, the place looked great at first. Big stone fireplace, old wood interior, huge windows facing the lake. Classic northern cabin. The first night was completely normal. We cooked food, played cards, and drank a little. Everyone was relaxed except Tyler. That started almost immediately. He kept checking the windows constantly, barely drinking, barely talking. At first we assumed he was just socially awkward, but later that night while everyone else was joking around in the kitchen, I found him standing alone near the back door staring outside. I asked him what he was looking at, and without turning around he quietly said, "My uncle told me something weird before we came up here." I laughed and said, "What?" He hesitated for a second before answering. He said not to go outside after midnight. I remember actually smiling because I thought he was setting up some dumb, scary story. But Tyler didn't smile back. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. I asked him why. And after another long pause, he said he wouldn't explain it. That conversation stuck in my head way longer than it should have. Mostly because Tyler honestly seemed disturbed talking about it. Still, none of us took it seriously. Around midnight, Amanda suggested we all go down to the frozen lake and take pictures under the moonlight. Everyone agreed immediately except Tyler. He flat out refused. I remember Derek making fun of him pretty hard for it. But Tyler kept saying, "Seriously, don't go outside tonight." That's when the mood finally shifted a little, because now he wasn't joking anymore. And honestly, there was something unsettling about someone being genuinely afraid when everyone else is relaxed. Eventually, Derek got annoyed and opened the front door anyway. The cold outside hit instantly. Sharp, freezing air. The kind that burns your lungs a little. We all started putting boots and coats on, except Tyler. He actually stepped in front of the door, and I'll never forget the look on his face. He was angry. He was scared. Real scared. He kept saying, "Guys, just wait until morning." Nobody listened. Derek laughed and pushed past him outside. The rest of us followed, except Tyler. He stayed inside. The lake behind the cabin was beautiful at night. Perfectly still. Moonlight reflecting off the snow. Trees barely moving in the wind. For the first few minutes, everything felt completely normal. Amanda was taking pictures. Shane and Derek were throwing snow at each other. Then Nate suddenly stopped talking. I remember looking over and seeing him staring across the lake, towards the opposite shoreline. At first I didn't see anything. Then I noticed movement between the trees. Several figures standing in the woods. Too far away for me to make out clearly, but definitely people, or at least human-shaped. I remember Derek yelling, "Hey!" No response. The figures didn't move, didn't wave, nothing. Amanda quietly asked, "Were they there before?" Nobody answered, because honestly, I don't think they were. The atmosphere changed immediately after that. The lake suddenly didn't feel open anymore. It felt exposed, like we were standing somewhere we shouldn't be. Shane joked that maybe they were locals messing with us, but nobody laughed much, especially when the figures slowly started walking onto the frozen lake towards us. Not fast and not threatening, just calmly walking forward. I remember Nate quietly saying, "We should go back." And for once nobody argued. We started walking towards the cabin pretty quickly, but the entire time those figures kept moving closer across the ice. Still silent, still walking slowly. And the weirdest part? There was no sound, no crunching snow, no ice cracking, nothing. By the time we reached the cabin porch, the figures were maybe halfway across the lake, still too dark to see clearly, but definitely moving towards us. Tyler opened the door before we even knocked. The second we got inside, he locked it immediately. I remember Derek laughing nervously and saying, "Okay, dude, what the hell is this?" Tyler looked towards the windows and quietly said, "They always come closer if they see people outside." Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Shane asked, "Who comes closer?" Tyler didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the fireplace and stared into the flames for a second before finally saying, "My uncle used to bring hunting groups up here." His voice sounded shaky now. He said people started seeing figures on the lake late at night. Amanda immediately said, "People?" Tyler shrugged slightly. He said sometimes they look like people. That answer made the entire room go quiet. I remember feeling genuinely uneasy for the first time then, not because I believed in ghosts or anything, but because Tyler clearly believed what he was saying. And outside, those figures were still moving. At one point, Nate pulled the curtain aside slightly to look, then immediately let it fall shut again. I asked him what he saw, and he quietly said, "They're standing near the shore now." Nobody checked after that. Around 2 a.m., the power suddenly went out. Everything went black instantly. And outside, through the windows, we could see shapes moving slowly around the cabin. Not running, not attacking, just circling. I remember Amanda started to cry quietly while Derek tried acting calm even though he looked terrified. Then came the knocking. 3 slow knocks at the front door. Not loud, almost polite. Nobody moved. A minute later, 3 knocks on the side wall of the cabin. Then another from somewhere near the back door, like multiple people walking around outside. The knocking continued for almost an hour. Slow, patient, never aggressive. And honestly, that somehow made it worse. At one point, Shane finally snapped and yelled, "Who's out there?" The knocking stopped immediately. Complete silence. Then from somewhere outside the cabin, we heard a voice. Very calm, very distant. It said, "You shouldn't have come onto the lake." Amanda completely lost it after that. Crying, panicking, wanting to leave immediately. But Tyler refused. He kept saying, "That's what they want." Nobody slept the rest of the night. We stayed together in the living room until sunrise. And sometime around dawn, the sound outside finally stopped. When daylight came, we checked outside immediately. There were no footprints anywhere around the cabin. Not one. Not on the porch, not near the walls, not around the lake. Nothing. Just untouched snow. But out on the frozen lake, about halfway between the cabin and the woods, there was a single dark shape standing motionless on the ice, watching the cabin. And even in daylight, none of us could tell if it was actually a person. There were 5 of us on the trip. Me, my younger brother Evan, our friend Marcus, Marcus's girlfriend Jenna, and another guy named Cole, who honestly none of us knew that well. Cole was one of Marcus's work friends. The trip itself was supposed to be simple. 3 days hiking and camping in the Upper Peninsula before winter got too bad. Nothing extreme. None of us were hardcore outdoors people or anything. Just normal guys trying to get away from work and phones for a weekend. The first day was completely normal. Cold but clear weather. Good trails. A few other hikers were here and there. Honestly, pretty relaxing. The problem started on the second day. We'd planned to hike out to an old fire tower locals online kept talking about. Supposedly, you could see for miles from the top. Marcus downloaded directions before we lost service and said it should only take a few hours. At first, the trail looked normal. Narrow dirt path through dense woods. But after maybe an hour, things started feeling strange. Not scary exactly, just off. The woods had gotten unusually quiet. There were no birds, no wind, nothing. At one point, Evan actually stopped walking and said, "Do you guys hear that?" We all stopped, and honestly, the silence itself is what bothered me. There was absolutely nothing. No leaves moving, no insects, nothing. Just dead silence. Cole laughed it off and kept walking. But after that, the mood definitely changed a little. About another 40 minutes later, Marcus admitted he thought we might have missed a turn somewhere. The trail had gradually gotten harder to follow. Branches hanging lower, paths were narrowing, old trail markers disappearing. Jenna immediately wanted to turn back, but Marcus kept insisting the tower had to be close. Then suddenly, the woods opened up. We all stopped walking at the same time, because there was a town ahead of us. Not a modern town, an old one. Small buildings, narrow streets, and wooden storefronts. The entire place looked abandoned. At first, I generally thought it was some kind of historical attraction, like an old mining town preserved for tourists. But the second we walked closer, something felt deeply wrong. There were no signs, no parking lot, no information boards, nothing. Just buildings sitting silently in the middle of nowhere. And the weirdest part, none of us had seen any mention of this online. No pictures, no reviews, nothing. Cole immediately wanted to explore. Of course he did. He was the type who thought everything was an adventure. Marcus agreed almost instantly. Meanwhile, me and Jenna both felt uncomfortable immediately. I remember saying, "Why would there be an entire town out here with no roads?" Nobody answered, because honestly it didn't make sense. The buildings themselves looked old but not ruined. Almost maintained. Windows intact, porches standing, street lamps still hanging. But there was nobody there. Not one person. Even the air felt strange. Heavy somehow. Like before a thunderstorm. We slowly walked farther into town together. Every sound suddenly felt loud. Boots on dirt, backpacks shifting, breathing. At one point, Evan quietly said, "Does this place smell weird to anyone else?" And he was right. The air smelled faintly like smoke. Not campfire smoke. More like burned wood. Old burned wood. Cole kept wandering ahead of us, looking into buildings. Most were empty. Tables, old shelves, and dust. But nothing personal. No photographs, no clothes, nothing. Like people had vanished all at once. Then we found the diner. That's when things got bad. The front door was slightly open. And unlike the other buildings, this one actually looked recently used. There were cups sitting on the tables. Silverware and napkins. Like people had been eating there recently. I remember Marcus actually laughing nervously and saying, "Okay, this has got to be some kind of weird tourist thing." Then Evan pointed towards the counter. There was steam rising from a coffee cup. Fresh steam. The entire room went silent. I still remember the feeling in my stomach when I saw it. Because suddenly the town wasn't abandoned anymore. Someone was here. And none of us had heard or seen anyone. Jenna immediately said we needed to leave. Honestly, I agreed. But before anyone moved, we heard sound outside. A bell. Somewhere deeper in the town. One loud metal ring. Then silence again. Cole walked to the diner window and looked out. And suddenly his entire expression changed. I'll never forget it. He quietly said, "There are people outside." Everybody rushed toward the windows. At first I didn't see anything. Then movement. Figures standing motionless farther down the street. Not close, just watching. Maybe 6 or 7 of them. They were completely still. I remember one thing immediately. Their clothes looked wrong. Not costumes exactly, just old, outdated. And none of them moved at all. Marcus actually waved awkwardly. Nobody waved back. Then one of them slowly started walking towards the diner. Something about the way they moved made every instinct in my body scream that we needed to leave immediately. Not running, not aggressive, just slow, deliberate walking. Like they already knew we weren't going anywhere. Jenna started panicking. Cole kept saying maybe they were actors or locals messing with people. But honestly, no one believed that anymore. Because the closer the figure got, the less normal they looked. pale skin, blank expression, dark eyes. And they never looked away from the diner window, not once. Marcus finally said, "Everybody outside, now." The second we stepped out the diner, every figure in the town stopped moving completely. Dead still again, watching us. I remember realizing then how quiet the town really was. No birds, no wind, no voices, nothing. Just us and those people. We started walking back towards the woods quickly. Nobody talked. Nobody even looked back much. And then, from somewhere behind us, we heard another bell ring, this time closer. Then another, and suddenly, the people in the town started walking towards us all at once. Not running, just calmly walking. Every single one of them. That's when we ran, straight back towards the woods. I remember branches hitting my face and Jenna crying somewhere behind me. At one point, Evan actually fell hard enough and I had to grab him by the backpack and pull him up. And the entire time, we could hear footsteps behind us. Not sprinting, just steady walking. Like they knew they didn't need to hurry. We didn't stop running for almost an hour. Then we finally reached the actual trail again. Marcus checked his phone. No signal still, but the downloaded map was open. And according to the GPS, there was no town anywhere near us. Nothing at all. Just forest. We packed up camp before dark and drove home that night. Nobody argued. Nobody even wanted dinner. The weirdest part happened 2 days later. Marcus called me and asked if I unpacked everything from the backpack yet. I said no. Then he told me to check the front pocket. Inside mine, there was an old silverware napkin from the diner, wrapped carefully around a receipt. At the bottom of the receipt, underneath faded menu items, was a handwritten sentence that said, "Thank you for visiting Gray Hollow."